What's good, y'all? Hope everybody's living well and staying blessed. It's your boy, Markus B. As always, I'm joined by not Evan, but me and Chris holding it down. Evan had some other prior engagements. So just me and Chris holding it down here at Holla at Me with yours truly. And today we had a very special guest, a gentleman that I've been wanting to have on for quite some time now, and just schedules didn't allow, but we got him in here, Mr. Norm Bergeron. Norm is the percussion director at Temple College. He is a former graduate from UNT. He is an absolute monster jazz drummer and just overall thoughtful and mindful individual. So that's what we talked about, man. We talk about music. We talk about philosophy. We talk about mental health and well-being, and just overall great conversation. And I'm glad we finally did get to get him in here. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you do, make sure you like, follow, share, and subscribe as much as you can. We'd greatly appreciate it. Get it out to as many people as possible, and we would be very thankful for that. If you need any supplements, nutrients, workouts, apparel, anything of that nature, make sure you go to Raycon1. Use promo code T20MarcusB under tier operator. It's the one line right above checkout, right? It's right there before you go. So if you type that in, T20MarcusB, you'll get an extra 20% off your entire order, and you will also help support the podcast, and we greatly appreciate you guys. Hope you enjoy the episode. Peace. My friend, thank you for being here. Much appreciated. Mr. Norm Bergeron, got him on the podcast. Many talks about getting you on at some point, and here we are. Finally got you here. So
here we are.
Like the standard questions: who are you? Where are you from? What do you do?
Yeah.
Deepest, darkest secrets. All those things.
Who am I? That's a great question. That's some existential shit.
We could be as existential or face value as you want, man.
Yeah. So Norm Bergeron, named after my uncle. That's not the secret, but named after my uncle. From Sanford, Maine. Sanford, Maine. Funny side story. Sanford, Maine's where Vic Firth grew up.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
His dad was the high school band director. Yeah, so when I went to Sanford High School, crappy little high school, but right above the band podium, the band director's podium on the wall, was a picture of Vic's dad, the band director in the 1930s and 1940s.
God bless.
Yeah, so there's that, Sanford, Maine. Milltown, yep, lots of shoes. They make shoes. Used to, back in the day. So, what do I do? Man, that's a good question. I've considered myself a whole bunch of things in my life, but I think at this point in my life, I'm sort of a facilitator. I want to help people figure out what it is that they want to do musically or in life or whatever, and facilitate that to the best of my ability. Like I don't want to be a pedagogue and teacher and yell at you and teach that way. I want to sort of open up possibilities and help you figure it out on your own. Deepest, darkest secret. So yeah, named after my uncle. But that's not what I was supposed to be called.
Really?
Yeah, it's a good story. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
So my dad was disabled the year I was born with rheumatoid arthritis, but before then was like captain of the football team back in the day, Catholic high school. He was an auto mechanic. He'd been in the Air Force.
Man's man.
Yeah, true man's man. And he had this coworker buddy who had a kid before he and my mom decided to have kids. And this guy had a son, and the son's name was, I don't know if it was his real name or not, but they called him Chop Chop. And Chop Chop was a brute. Chop Chop was that kid that would like pick up cats by their tails and like swing them around. And my dad was like, that kid's a badass. If I ever have children, male or female, they will be called Chopper.
Chopper.
So, fast forward a couple of years, my dad has a 427 Corvette convertible. He's a mechanic.
Beautiful.
This car vibrated in a certain way, which made my mom very excited. So then I'm conceived. And so in the hospital, the nuns, it's a very Catholic New England town.
Gotcha.
The nuns come around to help fill out the forms.
Yeah.
And they're like, what will your son's name be? And my dad's like, Chopper. And the nun's like, no, it will not. And so he's like, well, screw it. Call him Norman. And then the nun was like, middle name? And he's like, listen, you already made him name, like, he already has the wrong first name. He's not going to have a middle name.
Jesus.
So I have no middle name.
Okay.
Yep.
Single last name then?
Yeah, Bergeron. Yeah, so
you're
Norman Bergeron, no middle name. But my family always just called me Chopper. Everybody. Like, I went to school, grew up, I was Chopper. When I got to University of North Texas, everybody knew me as Chopper. So I have friends in Austin that I knew from the UNT days, still call me Chopper. Huh. So it's not really a secret so much as a secret to you.
Secret to me, yeah. That's. I mean, I've known you for 4 years, and that's the first time I'm hearing about this. So.
There you go.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. Exciting, right?
It brings up a separate question. I got two things off of that. Were you supposed to be named Chris? Was that your original name, or were you almost named something else?
My mom says she was deciding between two, but I can't remember what the other option was.
The other one was?
No.
My dad wanted my name to be Harley because of Harley Davidson.
Sure.
Yeah, naturally.
Naturally.
And somehow we landed on Markus.
Yeah.
And then they put a K and then a U, and now I get no souvenirs.
Right, because where will you find them? Yeah. Yeah, Norman is similar, by the way. Finding things with Norman.
Yeah.
It's not, it's like Eugene or like Walter.
It feels like a common name, but turns out.
Yeah, there aren't too many of us.
Yeah.
Although if you look up Norman Bergeron online, there's me, and there's my uncle. And then there's actually another drummer somewhere in the Midwest somewhere, which is kind of weird.
What are the chances?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Second thing on that.
Yeah.
Because I have this belief as a parent, after teaching for, X amount of years, if you name your kids something, you're going to lead them to be someone.
Ah, interesting. So if you give them a tough name, they're going to turn out tough?
I don't think not necessarily like a tough or anything like that, but just like, so one of the fighters that I'm a big fan of, Donald Cowboy Cerrone, his son's name is Danger. That kid's not reading books for fun.
Yeah. Right. I dig.
Like, I don't think he's going to be like a troublesome kid or like cause problems because he's got a good family, but I definitely think he's going to be throwing M80s in snake holes.
Yeah, that could be. But I wonder if that has anything to do with the name or if it has to do with the type of parent
Also true.
who would name their kid Danger and then their ultimate parenting style. Dig what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you, man.
So, like, growing up, there was a kid that lived across the street from me, and his name was Trout, like the fish, because his dad liked to fish.
That's a tough look. That's a tough look. I'm disappointed with Mom. You got to say something, dude.
Trout. I wonder where Trout is these days. I have no idea.
That's hilarious.
Crazy.
Or just like, one of the comedians I follow named his kids Boston and Tiger. I don't like a name like Tiger. Like,
what if the kid ends up not having a tigerish personality? That's going to be interesting.
Like that's.
Yeah, that could be problematic.
You're almost setting them up for like heavy success or crazy failure. Yeah. Because I'm not going to take. I don't want my accountant to be named Tiger. What do you mean your name is Tiger? No, Tiger Woods. You play. Mm-hmm. You're the best athlete in the world.
Right.
That's what I need you to do.
But don't do my math. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Huh. Yeah, naming's interesting, right?
Yeah. I mean, you have kids. Did any of these thoughts go through your head as?
Oh, sure. And like, who are you going to honor? If you're going to honor somebody in the
Yeah,
family, like
yeah.
which grandmother, or if you honor one grandmother, and then is that going to piss off the other grandmothers? And then, especially if they're all still alive, right?
Yeah, if they're all still alive, and
if
there's
you honor
4 of
someone
them.
who's passed, right? Yeah, exactly. So that's an interesting. Yeah, naming kids is interesting.
Yeah.
And also, having your kid have a fairly interesting name without it being an interesting name, right?
Yeah.
So that it's pronounceable
Yes. And readable.
and readable. I had this student in the sort of general studies classes at the college, not a music major. And the day before the first day of class, I always look at the roll in advance, and I go
Smart
through
man.
and, make sure I can
did-
try to pronounce people's names correct, just in case.
I got caught up
Yeah.
after I got. I had a tough experience the first time I didn't look at the roster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had done my studies, and anyway, the day of first day of class, and I'm calling roll. This is an American music class for non-majors, and I'm going down. Everything's going smashingly, and I get to this. I assume the young lady's name, and it's La Quinta. La Quinta está aquí. And it turns out it was just this big, beautiful African American mama, and she says, "Honey, the name's La Quinta." And I was like, "Okay, awesome, La Quinta, welcome to class." But
Glad you're here.
there you go.
Yeah. See, yours was a lot smoother. When that happened to me, was when I was student teaching elementary. You see, I think either second grade class, and it was in San Antonio. So there's a healthy amount of Mexican students there. So a lot of times their names run super long.
Right.
The class right before that had happened, and I was like, I can't, like, it cut off letters.
Sure.
Turned to my TA. I was like, hey man, like, what's this name? And she helps me out, and I was like, cool man. Handled that swimmingly. Get to the next class, and I'm like, Miss Ruth, I think it happened again. I don't know what this name is. And I flashed to her, and she's like, nope, that's Absidy. And I was like, and I look, and this little sweet little mixed girl, and just head to the side smiling at me. And I was like, your parents set you up for failure because your first name is ABCDE.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no.
Absidy, man. Right.
Same class, and this is where the thought process started going through, because those two names, it was Absidy, and I have to assume he was Asian. Name was Raiden.
Raiden.
Yeah, like from Mortal Kombat.
Wow.
A1 name, but again,
Wow.
he can't be a soft individual.
No. I mean, you can, but it's going to be weird.
It's gonna be strange.
Yeah, man. Yeah, names. There you go.
There you go. Anyways, quick rundown backstory.
Sure.
So born in Maine.
Grew up in Maine. Small state, technically speaking, right? I mean, around 1 million people in the whole state, so like smaller than DFW in terms of population.
Yeah, which is crazy.
But it's a big state.
Yeah.
Lot of trees and lobsters and potatoes and stuff. But I grew up in southern Maine, sort of almost the very tip of southern Maine, so basically northern Massachusetts. So
Gotcha.
grew up with a hell of a thick New England Pacific.
Ooh, really?
Oh yeah, yeah. When I got to so I'll get there in a second. But when I got to college, which was in Texas, yeah, the accent was still quite thick. So I grew up in southern Maine, and only child, and started music pretty early. I mean, it's in my bio because I think it's a funny story. But one of my earliest memories is sitting in the basement. Houses in New England have basements and cellars and stuff. So, and the laundry typically is in the basement of the house. So anyway, I was sitting in the basement of the house between the washing machine and the dryer. There was kind of a space the way my parents had it set up, and like totally getting off on the rhythm of the washing machine. But then the the dryer was humming. So
Yeah.
like I was like singing overtones to the like dryer, not knowing what they were. I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't know what overtones were, but I was like, whoa, if you sing just a little bit out of tune with it, it feels cool in your head. You know? So I was always into music for sure.
Yeah.
Joined band as soon as I could. Drums seemed like the right thing. Did all the all-state stuff and all-state jazz and all that. And then started taking private lessons in 8th grade, I guess. And by the time I was a senior and thinking that I might want to go to college, my dad was the first guy in my family to get a college degree. And
Okay.
it was after he was disabled and he was able to go back to school and get a degree in accounting. But yeah, Modern Drummer magazine ran a really great, this would have been in fall of 88, maybe. Yeah, fall of 88. Ran a really great article about like the top schools to go to if you want to study drums. And so
Okay.
it was Berklee College of Music in Boston, which makes sense.
Naturally.
Miami, which makes sense. And the University of North Texas. Those were the 3 schools.
Really? Miami for drum set?
Oh, yeah. I mean, a whole bunch of bad dudes had just graduated from there in the last 10 or 15 years.
Gotcha. Okay.
Rod Morgenstein, the drummer for the Dixie Dregs. I mean, the Dixie Dregs were all students from Miami, so like anyway.
Gotcha.
It's a killer
Gotcha,
program.
gotcha.
Still is a killer program. Anyway, so I applied to all 3 schools, got into all 3 schools,
Really?
but then got the potential bill from all 3 schools, and we were a poor family. And this is in 89, and Berkeley was already almost $40,000 a year in 89, and Miami was about the same price. And UNT's out-of-state tuition was cheaper than in-state tuition in the state of Maine. It cost me less money to go to UNT than it would have to go to my home
To like Maine University?
University of Maine at Orono.
Yeah.
And I had been offered a full ride to go to the University of New Hampshire, which would have been a great experience, but I would have been a very big fish in a very small
Yeah.
pond.
Yeah.
And so UNT it was. So fall of 89, I went to pack my car on campus. It's pretty sweet. And it drove my van, my creeper van.
Of course you had a van.
Creeper van, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, no windows, white.
80, I'm going to go with like an 84
It was
Econoline.
an 84 Dodge Tradesman. Yeah. Black like half vinyl seats, right? They weren't even like buckets. They only came up half seats and black vinyl, no air conditioning.
Beautiful.
Drove to Texas to go to college. And so I stayed at UNT, did my undergrad in jazz, and then stuck around to do a master's degree in interdisciplinary studies. So it's kind of a make up your own degree.
Yeah.
So I did anthropology, ethnomusicology, and documentary film for that. And
Wild mix. We'll get back to those 3 things.
Yeah, and a lot of sort of comparative religion tucked in there as well. And met my then girlfriend, now wife of, I've been married 25 years. In February it was 25 years. 2
Happy,
kids.
which one's 25? You don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, so pretty great. We moved away after we got married in the late 90s. We moved back to New England for a bit, and Shannon was doing education stuff with Neil Larrabee at Vic Firth, and
Damn.
I was gigging all over Boston and teaching, and then we ended up back in Maine for almost a decade, and then in 2010 she'd had enough of the cold, and we came back and lived in Austin, and I've been at Temple College. I just finished my 10th year at TC, so
Damn. Okay.
that's the basic rundown.
And now we're tired of the hot and head back to Maine.
Yeah, well now, I mean, she's reached a certain age, and it's easier to put on a sweatshirt if you're feeling a little bit cool than it is to. You can only take off so much clothes.
Yeah.
Without people looking at you funny, and
Then even then, yeah.
yeah, and even then, so we're hoping to get back up there in the next few years to do like the retirement thing.
Right on, man.
The kids are both up on the East Coast, so it'd be nice to go back.
One's graduated, one's still.
They both graduated.
Oh, they're both
Yeah,
graduated.
Yeah, Allie's in Philly and Sam's in Western Mass. And yeah. What do you
Okay.
want to know about this funny degree that I have?
First off, how do you like? Because we were literally just talking about this last night. If I'm going back for a master's, like I want. We're talking about Duran. We got on this whole heartthrob of being a musician
Sure.
and such, as you do with Duran. But if I was going to go back, I'd want to do some sort of interdisciplinary studies of Latin music, something, and legitimizing the world of hip hop into the Western
Sure.
musical curriculum. So, first question: How do you say that you're going to get a master's in interdisciplinary studies?
So for me, when it happened at UNT, it was frankly out of necessity. UNT
Gotcha.
didn't offer an ethno degree at the time, an ethnomusicology degree.
Okay.
And we had some ethno professors on staff, but they didn't have a degree in it yet. And I really wanted to study more ethno. And then what I realized pretty quickly, because I was studying I was taking some classes already, was that ethnomusicology is the anthropology of music. So that means a lot of the research methodology and sort of the fathers of ethno were people who were involved in the anthropology world. So I was
Gotcha.
like, okay, so that makes sense. I've always been interested in film, and for me, the idea of documenting something is a way to archive it so that we don't lose it, right?
Yeah.
And especially in the 90s, a bunch of us were really concerned, and there's still some concern around this, but a bunch of us in the 90s were getting really concerned with this idea of cultural gray out. This idea that as the mother culture, meaning the culture of the West, meaning McDonald's and, Michael Jackson and Reeboks and whatever, was going to inundate the entire world, and we were going to lose all of our traditional cultures.
Okay, interesting.
And one could argue that has happened, was already happening, and of course the internet, and now cell phones with internet access, it's making it even faster.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that what a lot of these anthropologists and ethnomusicologists were really worried about, like literally there just being one culture and everybody listening to the same exact music, and it didn't really happen.
So not as bad as they had thought it would be, but
It's still,
they're still on par for something.
yeah, I mean, it's still pretty bad, but go to India, and Bollywood is as big of a deal as Hollywood is in our country, and
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
have their own stars, and listen to European pop music. I mean, they have artists that sometimes cross over, but some of the artists they just want to stay and be European pop artists. Go to Texas. I mean, we're hanging on to a whole bunch of Hispanic traditions, which is a whole separate topic of conversation.
Still can't
but-
pronounce any of the names correctly, but
Yeah, but it's, again, it's a separate topic of depth conversation another
Yeah.
time maybe. But this idea that somebody decided that mariachi, which is a style of music from a very small region in a large country like Mexico, was going to be the music that we
Yeah.
were going to export. And it would be similar if we said in the United States, bluegrass is the music that we're going to make all the kids in America learn because it is one of the foundational musics of our country.
Yeah.
Like, it's a great style of music, but
Not
it's
quite.
a subset. But it's a
Yeah.
subset music,
Yeah.
And the same's true of mariachi in Mexico. So, but anywho, so for me, it was I had to do it. If I wanted to go back and get a master's degree, I could have done jazz studies again, or I guess I could have done just even concert. I could have done lots of things. But if I wanted to do the ethno route, I kind of had to combine some
Yeah.
things. And film for me, again, getting back to that, is a way to. I can go to a culture, you can go to a culture, you can go to downtown Philly and write about what's happening in the hip hop world in Philly, but that's going through your lens. If you're a filmmaker and you're filming raw footage and you're showing people raw footage and not editing it in some way to try to get somebody to think a certain way,
Yeah.
now you're just observing something and you're archiving it. And so that's sort of where the documentary film part came in.
Interesting. Okay.
It didn't hurt that the head of the ethno program at the time, Dr. Friedson, had been a great performer before he got into doing the ethno thing. So we saw eye to eye. Dr. Larry Naylor, who was the head of the anthropology department, had paid his way through grad school as a jazz drummer, studying anthropology in Papua New Guinea, studying the indigenous folks of Papua New Guinea. But
Jesus.
when he was back on campus, he was a jazz drummer, and he, played gigs to make money.
Hell of a transition back and forth.
And Ben Levin, who was the head of the documentary film department, actually had his master's degree in classical percussion from Eastman. So I had these three guys on my committee who, right, that I saw eye to eye with on lots of things. And so...
hell of a mix-up.
So it was really cool. And then, you know, all the other... I mean, it took, obviously, classes with lots of other professors, but it allowed me to really sort of concentrate on what I wanted to know more about. And that's one of the great things about it, like a Bachelor of Applied Arts and Science, like a liberal studies degree, right? It's like you go to a school and instead of taking a bunch of core classes and being pigeonholed into whatever, nursing, auto mechanics, whatever your thing is, these liberal arts and studies degrees are a way for you to like get a really broad education and learn about crap that you never got to take in high school.
Yeah.
And these master's degrees in interdisciplinary studies are set up the same way. You kind of have an idea, what fields do I need to pull together in order to study that field and write the paper that I want to write or make the film that I want to make or write or so to your point, if you wanted to do something Latin studies but then tying that into legitimizing hip hop culture and music in an educational setting, I mean, you'd want to do an interdisciplinary program where they had a killer anthropology program, ethnomusicology program, and music ed program, right? Because that third wheel would be music ed. Like how do I affect change in the music ed world to get people to understand that mariachi's badass, so's hip hop.
Yeah.
And then how do we bring it into the schools? It's being done, by the way. I mean, you wouldn't be the first person to do it, but
slow burn. Yeah.
I mean,
there's people out there, but and this is the conversation that we're having with Duran. It's like, so I don't want to try to not say the same things over and over again, but the people that are like the quote unquote historians of the hip hop culture are just doing that. They're not necessarily tied to a university. You know what I mean? Like there's your DJs, DJ Premier, academics, so on. Like you can sit down and talk to them.
Questlove, I mean, knows everything about everything. You know, he's an those guys you're talking about are all autodidacts, right? To be an autodidact is a person who says, "I'm going to study this thing." Like I'm going to do it. You know, and degree, whatever. Okay.
And of course you don't need the degree, but like when I had this idea, it was at the end of my college career, and you know, like most people do, it's like, am I going to go straight into teaching? Am I going to go into get a master's degree? And my friends split half and half, so I was like, what would I get a master's in? And then, so I wanted my idea, and I think you might be able to grasp it a little bit better. The cultural influence of like the three composers of like the three most influential of Western music, arguably, depending on who you're talking to, Bach, Mozart, Beethoven.
Sure.
Whatever,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And then how they changed music and what they did to like progress music into the common man, and then you get to 1980s, and then you have who did I say? And this is where it kind of got mixed up because you have to choose wisely. But I was thinking I was gonna go to like Dr. Dre, Jay-Z, and I think like Ice Cube.
I mean, they were game changers.
Something like that. Yeah. So, and then just like back and forth of Bach did this with music, and he creates these cyclical lines, and then you have Ice Cube that creates these cyclical lines with his flow. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think
there's something there. There's a lot of research that needs to be done.
Oh, for sure.
On both ends, and I think that's why I'm saying legitimize. It sounds a little condescending, but when I say legitimize, I mean like
in academia.
In academia, they already know the white people, so like let me explain to white people and how.
Well, dude, I mean, I'm certainly not telling you, I'm not trying to dissuade you from anything, but think about a school like North Texas, which I'm not bragging on it, but it's where I went. But like, they founded the first jazz studies program in the world.
Yeah.
And here we are 50 years later,
Mm-hmm.
more than that, 60 years later of that jazz program. Jazz still isn't considered a legitimate musical form.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And that's jazz. You know, and that's not to diminish hip hop, but like just saying in terms of years of having it been around, it takes some pretty forward-thinking people to go, this style of music is important to save. It's important to use it as a tool to teach these same topics that you can teach in a traditional band class. I mean, another deep, dark secret, but those 9 years that I taught in Maine in a small rural school district, I won't get into why the previous band director was let go, but and so I get hired without a music ed degree, like
really?
I'm not certified.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I did jazz studies and
Yeah.
all this brainy shit. And so, but they hired me because I had plenty of music degree hours, and they said, create a music program where kids want to be involved.
Hell yeah.
Can you teach music stuff where kids want to be involved? And I was like, I can do that. So my first year, which was, I will never forget because it was fall of 2001. So like
Damn.
My first year on the job, you know, watching the towers and whatnot. But
Relatively close to.
and relatively close, yes. And even closer than that, in that one of my best friends teaching there was an English teacher who she and her husband had just moved from New York 2 years before.
Damn.
And like had friends on, like she had friends on their cell phones calling her. They were in the building. So I mean, it was very close. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's a quick dark aside. But they were like, you know, we want you to teach musical concepts and we want you to teach lifelong learning, which is sort of I think a super important thing to teach. And how can you do that in a music classroom? We'll give you a budget. It doesn't have to look like other things. It doesn't have to look like other schools. And when I started, they hadn't had any music in this high school for 4 years because when they let this guy go,
They just didn't.
they didn't do it. They didn't fire him. They basically said, hey, we're going to get rid of the music program for budgetary reasons so that it wouldn't become a big hoopla in the news.
Gotcha.
And the deal was, if they reopened the position within 4 years, he would have had first dibs to come back. Dig?
Gotcha.
So for 4 years, they had no music in this town.
Damn.
I mean, K through 5 had music, but middle school and high school had no music. And I came in my first year, I had 12 kids. Keep in mind, the high school was a regional high school, 3 towns feeding 1 high school. We had 200 and change at the high school. Total kids. Really rural Maine, working class town, paper mill town. And interestingly, a really, really, really conservative red, very angry red dot in a pretty blue place.
Yeah.
And anyway, they bring me in. I have about 12, 14 kids that first year. By the time I left 9 years later, I mean, the program was big way before then, but by the time I left, I had more than a third of the student body in my band.
Hell yeah.
But we did music that the kids liked and that the parents liked. And I taught musical concepts, but not in the old school way.
Yeah.
Like nothing was written out. I taught via rote. I mean, it was very much like teaching in Africa, you know, like we played samba at the football games. Like we didn't have a marching band. I had a samba school.
That's so dope, though.
We had 2 giant percussion ensembles that were, if you can imagine, basically Blue Man Group-esque stuff. So like we're doing rock tunes that the parents recognize, classic rock material for the most part, Pink Floyd, whatever, with vocalists, guitars, keyboards, bassists, and percussion ensemble.
Hell yeah.
And full PA, everything's mic'd, and that's what our shows were. And the town loved it because it wasn't what everybody else did.
Yeah.
I bring this up, and it was a pretty big tangent, but I bring it up to say I wasn't very well liked by other music teachers in the state of Maine, because kids would go from a town away, would be like, "Oh, look what we're playing Sousa marches, man." Like, what the, right?
And they're over there, like, you know, getting ready to do your marching band show, and then you guys are just in the stand, bucket to get, bucket to
Yeah,
get, bucket
that's
to get, bucket to
it.
get.
Yeah. And anyway, it was a great time, and my mission was, right, to teach lifelong learning, and I kept coming back to all the kids I knew in high school who played like clarinet and oboe and trumpet and whatever, and were pretty good musicians in high school band, might have played in college, and then all gave it up and had careers and babies and husbands and wives and never touched their instrument again. All the kids I went to high school with that we made fun of because they were into rock and roll and played guitar and they were metalheads were all still playing music on the weekends for fun. So lifelong learning, how about we teach instruments that people actually play when they're adults? I don't know. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with an oboe, right? And orchestras are an important thing. And I'm not saying we do away with those things. But I'm saying you're missing a really large portion of the high school population in any given town if you limit the band program to band, choir, and orchestra.
Yeah.
Because there are kids who want to do music, and it's not going to happen for them in those genres.
Yeah.
So what can you do? You know, what kind of program can you create that allows them? And you've heard about all these directors doing all these iPad ensembles and stuff.
Yeah.
And they've got kids writing. And Berkeley has a turntable major now. There's a dog barking somewhere. It's kind of.
Is that what it is? Okay.
I think so.
I thought it was somebody talking. I was like, who's in my house?
I think it's a dog. Definitely a dog.
Yeah, man. Like the turntable thing at Berkeley is super dope. And there is, you know, small pockets of schools. I got a buddy teaching at what is it, KIP? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's KIP.
The KIP schools, I mean, again, because they're charters, they get to do some of those things.
Well, his music room is just like, he's got like 4 or 5 drum sets, I think 12 guitars, 8 basses, and he's just like, we're learning Smoke on the Water today.
That's it. I mean, again, I got so excited a couple of years ago when that, and I can't remember, are they called the Panthers? What are they called? There's that middle school percussion ensemble group that went viral on YouTube, and they were playing like all of like heavy metal tunes and stuff.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And they're being taught via rote. They're not reading. And I was like, that's exactly what I was doing in Central Maine.
Really? Hell yeah.
And that's awesome. These kids are playing percussion. They're learning about notes. They're learning intervals. They're learning timing. They're learning how to work as a team. I mean, all those things that really band is about. Like you're learning them. It's just in another way.
Yeah, just in another way.
And if you have an ethno background and you can also get them thinking about, I don't know, other cultures besides the one they grew up in, maybe that's not a bad idea either.
That's kind of cool. Teach you things about other things that's not music.
Right. I mean, and that maybe other people aren't as different as you think they are. They like the same stuff as you, ultimately speaking, you know.
Yeah, man.
So
music that you want to shake your booty to is music that you want to shake your booty to.
That's it, man. That's it.
So the reason why I was kind of drawn towards the Latin music background is, I mean, obviously that's my culture, but I grew up as a dancer, and like, so like, it interested me how to then play the things that I was performing to on the other side of it. What was it for you? Because you know, as far as I know, there's no direct ties to any Latin America.
For me?
Yeah.
Oh, hell no. No. French Canadian, like, I mean, the Pope. Does that count? That's Latin. Dominus hominum. I mean, grew up Catholic. No, for me it was when I started taking lessons in 8th grade. Great teacher, Phil Verrill. It was a Berkeley grad, monster drummer.
Shout out, Phil.
Taught at Portland Percussion in Portland, Maine. One of those like workhorse dudes that or dudettes that we know that like spends their entire like Friday, Saturday, Sunday teaching 30 lessons a day. Like that's the way they make a living. And I started taking lessons with him on Saturdays in 8th grade, but mostly drum set, and then like a lot of like the old school rudimental stuff, the Will Coxon book, and eventually Cerrone, I think by freshman year in high school. But pretty early on, if you're learning drum set and you're learning it from the perspective of being a working drummer, you're learning the bossa nova, and then you're learning samba, and then you're learning independence within those styles, and then you're learning this is the mambo, and then there's this, and so I think for me, the Latin world, I mean, I've always liked groovy music. My dad always listened to really groovy music. My dad was like the only white guy in a black barracks in the Air Force, you know what I mean, in Sioux City, Iowa. Yeah. Like he was literally like I grew up with James Brown more likely than not on the turntable in my house.
Hell yeah.
Or the Ink Spots, or any number of great stuff.
Good thing to grow up with.
Yeah, and then later my dad got way into New Orleans stuff. Like when I was in high school, he got way into the Neville Brothers and Dr. John.
Really?
And that was awesome. So anyway, I was always into that stuff, but then having a drum set teacher showing me these things, and I was like, okay, now I've got to listen to recordings of this stuff, and then, you find out about Batacumbele out of Puerto Rico as a 10th grader or 11th grader in Maine, and you're like, oh, whoa, what is that? Like, that.
This is crazy.
That feels good. That feels better than anything else I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
And so, by senior year, I was studying some hand percussion stuff. Dr. John, he wasn't really a doctor. Dr. John Hadlock, John's killer conguero, who sort of a tie-in and shout out to another part of your life. He, as a young person, was living on the boardwalk and training every day with Franco Colombo and Schwarzenegger. He was a bodybuilder.
What?
Yeah. He was a tiny little East Coast guy who'd moved to California for his dreams and was lifting and bodybuilding back when that was, the beginnings of that, really.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like those godfathers of like that world. And he was one of them, like shared an apartment with Franco Colombo. Like, just crazy to think about.
It's the world,
But he's on the West Coast, so he's also like hanging out with Francisco Aguabea and like learning Latin stuff. So by the time I knew him, he'd had a really bad accident and couldn't lift anymore. He was, grumpy and in his shit. I mean, he seemed old to me. He might have been 28. I don't know. No, I think he was in his 40s, maybe early 50s. But like, so I had a chance to hang out with him and study some, and got really into it at that point. And then, to figure out your place in the world, sometimes you have to just figure out what your strength is in a weak market, or in a really strong market, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So when I got to UNT, I thought I was a really great jazz drummer. I was a marginally okay jazz drummer by UNT standards.
And in comparison,
I mean, Keith Carlock was there at the same time as me. Like we got there, the same day, we were all like, like he could already play like that in '89. He was already a god, and we just tiptoed around him. So I had just enough Latin background to be able to audition as a percussionist in the lab bands. And so you pretty quickly, if you end up as the percussionist in one of the top lab bands, now you're the person getting all the phone calls to do all the studio work, to do all the funk bands. So now you're getting what? Experience, because you're the first call guy and you're getting all the work, which means you grow faster, which means more things happen. And so I continued to work on drum set. That's what my degree is really in, my undergrad. But for me, that other side, and then you get to UNT and you're like, wait, there's an African drumming ensemble where you can learn about.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah. So legit Ghanaian Ewe music. So we were studying that. I actually went to Ghana in '94 and studied. And we had a Brazilian ensemble, and we had an Afro-Cuban ensemble, and, it's all there, And now there's even more, because now they have a Latin jazz group as part of the jazz degree. They have Latin jazz combos. So, I mean, there's a ton of stuff happening. And it just opened it all up, and I was like, this is all great. Bach, Brahms, and Beethoven are awesome. But there's all this other stuff, dude. Like,
a lot more things out there,
and
equally as cool, if not more cool.
Yeah, or at least differently cool.
Differently cool.
Yeah.
So that brings up a separate side of things. Another bit of, I would say there's probably three things that we kind of get along with that were able to converse. I know that's not a real word, but
Yeah.
obviously the music thing, and I do want to get into like your health and wellness bit, but this will get us there. You are a very mindful and thoughtful dude.
Thank you.
Why?
Why?
Like, is it that's how am I trying to ask this? Has that always been the case? Was it like a circumstance that you like made you step back and realize like that
Dude,
there's so much more going on? Like, what?
That's a really great question. I don't know. I'll journal about it tonight. I don't know. I mean, I think, part of being an only child, Gemini, and I don't know what all my other problems are, but I spent a lot of time alone thinking about stuff and playing by myself. Hardcore introvert, so I think that's part of it too. Like, people who know me now don't see me as an introvert because I'm one of those high functioning introverts. Like, I can pour it on all day long, but then I have to go home and like sleep for 2 days because it's so exhausting. But I think,
for the record, that I think that's the first. I never understood what introvert and extrovert meant, and when I got explained, it's like, what do you do after you're done with with like heavy interactions? Like,
well, and it's before too, actually. And if you're a really serious introvert,
you're like.
You got to build
yourself.
up. You got to build up to do anything.
You got to pregame a little bit
to like leave the house.
Yeah,
I mean, it could be like.
As I say, the best way I've heard it is a extrovert wakes up with no coins in the morning, and every social interaction you gain a coin. And so at the end of the day, you feel accomplished. An introvert wakes up with 5 coins, and every interaction takes a coin, and so they feel depleted at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's also a very good way of looking at it. And
okay, I dig that.
But it tends to mean too, not always, but a lot of introverts then also tend to be maybe a little bit more empathetic to other people's needs because they're sitting around worrying about themselves and everybody all the time.
Yeah.
So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. I think always been a heavy reader.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there are all kinds of influences there. I think being mindful of
fiction or nonfiction. Don't mean to
as a kid, it was all nonfiction. I mean, I grew up in Maine, so it was Stephen King. I mean, growing up, and then Edgar Allan Poe, and then the list is long.
Yeah.
Now I still love a great novel, or great poetry, but like a lot of nonfiction at this point in my life. But I think the sort of caring bit for me, I don't know where it comes from. I have good parents. My grandparents were badasses. I mean, that's, I'm sure, part of it, right? Being raised right.
Yeah.
But, again, grew up Catholic, not religious at all. But I think so much of it for me is always wanting to treat others the way, it's the golden damn rule, right? But like, just be cognizant, be aware.
That's what I'm asking is like, like I was always mindful and like thought a lot about, within my family, it was my dad and my sister were the people that, they walk through the door and they say hi to everybody. And then like me and my mom, like walk in, stand there, observe everything that's going on and like go to talk to 2 people. Like that's the way I grew up. But then I came to this realization. It's just like you're on a rock hurling through space at 96,000 miles an hour through a shooting gallery of sun flares and meteors that can end the world in a matter of seconds. So, just like be nice.
Yeah. I mean, for me, in the last couple of years, actually really in the last year, my reading has, my nonfiction reading has been leaning more and more into philosophical stuff, and specifically into sort of the Stoic side of things. And the word to be Stoic in modern parlance means you're like Spock or somebody, right? Like you don't feel, you have no emotions. That's not what the Stoics were at all. The Stoics had lots of emotions. But some of those Stoic, the deep held premises are the very things you just said, man. Like one of the things that they would say, Marcus Aurelius, right, would say a lot is like, memento mori, like remember that you will die. Not only like it's going to happen. Now that doesn't, you don't turn that into like walking around for the rest of your life dreading death.
Yeah.
You walk around going, you could die at any moment. So be a good person. Like do the best you can while you're here.
It's pretty,
and you don't have to be a religious person to feel that way. Like it just makes sense, right? Don't like I have a rule at Temple College, and it's DBAD. We talk about it in American music with my majors, and then we talk about it in a recital class. But DBAD is just don't be a dick. I mean, that's literally the rule of life. Just don't be a dick. And
it's the greatest teaching philosophy.
If we were all just not dicks, things would be so much nicer, and we would want to collaborate, and other things would happen out of that, right?
Yeah.
We're not gonna bash anybody in this conversation, but you and I both know musicians in Austin who are awesome.
Yeah.
Who don't get phone calls. And why? Because they're dicks. And it doesn't matter how great they play, people don't want to be around them.
Yeah, man. I want to play a gig, and then I don't need to get a beer with you afterwards, but it'd be cool if we did.
Yeah.
Like, I want to sit down, like, hey man, how's life? I ain't seen you since the last gig.
Totally.
2 weeks ago. Like.
Yeah, and if they do have to run, like, dude, I'm sorry, I got to run tonight, and it's still like, like a quick hug,
cool,
but whatever. But no, but just being a dick in general and calling people out on stage, there's no need for that.
That's crazy.
No one is good enough.
Can never imagine calling somebody out like in the middle of performance.
Happens all the time.
I'll give you some side eyes, like, all right, maybe we talk about that during intermission, but just in the middle of a stage, God bless.
Yeah, so I think that's part of it, and I think being, for me, sort of hyper aware. My dad again was disabled when I was a baby, so growing up as an only child, and then my parents were divorced when I was in the 6th grade. Like, my dad was completely, he could still walk, but not well. He had both knees replaced, both hips replaced. His ankles had been fused, wrists replaced, shoulders replaced, neck fused. He was basically, kind of walked like Frankenstein. And
he's basically a 2x4, man.
His fingers were like this long because there's no knuckle replacement for arthritis. So as your bones are wearing down, your fingers just shrink.
Oh my God.
You have no bones, so it's like you're just jello, and and so and in constant pain, which is the other joyful side of it. So I think having your dad say things like this to you when you're a young person. At the end of the day, when you've had the best day and you've been running and playing and jumping and you're just really tired, you're really, really beat. Yeah? By the time I get my feet on the floor in the morning when I'm getting out of the bed, I'm already that tired. It makes you have a certain level of compassion for
That'll
people.
do something for your psyche. Yeah,
for sure. It just makes you think about, and seeing the way people would treat him, for sure. Some people were gracious, but some people were like, oh, it's the handicap, or whatever, the crip.
Yeah.
And you learn from your parents from both sides. My dad, love him to death. My dad loved to argue about everything. My dad was very Catholic, very anti-abortion. But if you were to have a conversation with him and say that you were anti-abortion, he would instantly come out as being pro-abortion so that he would have something to argue about. He was an arguer.
Just automatic contrarian, no matter what.
Automatic, and consequently, people thought he was a dick. So I would watch that and go, oh, that's not a good way to be. Don't be a dick, Dad. Just saying.
Just the most sound life advice right there, man.
There's some pretty simple rules in life, right?
Yeah, it really is, man. I always think of this one Scrubs episode I just, I have a high. My free time, for whatever reason, not for whatever reason, but my free time was spent watching TV and things like that. And I latch on to some key things, even with my brain damage and lack of memory. Like there's this one episode in Scrubs where they featured Sesame Street, and like, did you ever watch Scrubs at all?
I never watched Scrubs, but I watched a lot of Sesame Street.
Shout out. But like the way every episode ends, there's like this closing monologue of ideas, and that's why I enjoyed the show. Is that it's like, hey man, we're gonna hit you with some funny, some life stuff, some heavy stuff, make you think about some things, make you cry, and then we're gonna like remind you at the end, like, hey man, like life. And just like this one particular episode, it's like life boils down to things you learned from Sesame Street. Play nice with others. Don't say hurtful things, like, and just like the way, because it's also, they do the Sesame theme, acoustic minor.
Love it.
So it's just like,
that's super cool.
You're feeling all these heavy emotions and thinking all these things as they're talking you through. Like, damn, it really is just like, it's like 7 rules maybe.
Yeah, but the big one is just try to be nice. I mean,
try to be nice, yeah.
And I think by and large, most humans can function that way. I mean, I got really worried early COVID, masking, all of that stuff, that people were not going to be nice to other people. And I found even here in this place where we live, that by and large, people were pretty damn nice to other people, for the most part, Is that to say that everyone is nice? No, but by and large, we all realized we were suffering through the same global pandemic together, and people were pretty nice.
For the first few months, at least.
Yeah. Even now, man. Like, at every time there's another potential bubble, and you start seeing people mask up again at the store, like, no one's walking around being yes, maybe there's some people walking around being dicks, but
very small.
But it's a really small percentage.
Yeah.
And I had early on, not super early on, because we were, early on, we didn't leave the house at all. Later on, when we were leaving the house, but with a mask on and still not going inside.
Yeah.
Shannon was training for a 5K, and we'd gone over to the Pepper Creek Trail. There was a little 5K run that day. It's a fun run, and she'd signed up for it. And,
thank you.
Never been a runner. It's not really my body shape or a thing that I wanted to do as a young person. And anyway, I was there anyway, and I had my mask on because it was a 5K during COVID, and we were told if you're going to be there, you have to have a mask on, even though it's outdoors on Pepper Creek Trail. And I was like, all right, but it was a really cool day. It was really cool. It was that first fall of 2020, I think.
Nice.
Was that fall.
Okay.
It was nice out. But anyway, I was like, well, shit. If I'm just going to walk Pepper Creek Trail, why don't I just jog? So anyway, I ended up running the damn 5K. Not to race it, but just to do it. And I was coming back from the trail side of things, back towards where the train trellis area was. I was coming back from that side of Pepper Creek Trail back towards where we had started. And I saw this young man off in the field, and he had a dog, and they were playing Frisbee. It was adorable, and I was actually almost welling up. I was like, this kid is like, it's a Saturday, he's out in the field playing with his dog, like a boy and his dog. Like, that's the best story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm running with my mask on, and this kid stands up and he's yelling in my general direction, and I'm like, what's going on? And he's yelling at me, and he's like, fucking moron. Why are you wearing a mask? It's all a government ploy. He's yelling, and he's so angry, and he's jumping up and down. And his dog, which is a German Shepherd, is now getting like, they're really far away from him. But the dog's getting aggressive because the owner's yelling, and I'm like, what is wrong with this young man? What does it matter to him if I'm wearing a mask? What if I was walking around with a bra on my head? Would he yell at me about wearing a bra? Like, why is he so upset that I'm choosing to wear a mask? And
Damn.
I have had
I can
anger
just
issues.
picture this moment, and
Yeah.
it's a.
Well, and I forget that I'm 6'6" and have tattoos and whatnot, and I've had anger issues in my life. I'm knocking on a lot of wood right now. I'm working really hard in my life to be a much nicer, gentler person, but I've had anger issues, and my first thought was, I'm just going to turn around and run towards him, and we're going to have a conversation about this. And I was like, no, because it will turn into some sort of physical altercation, or his dog will bite me. Anyway, yeah, and later in the day, I was like, man, I would have loved to have had just a nice chat with him and just ask him gently, like, why so angry, man? Why are you so upset about
Who
it?
pissed you off, man?
Like,
Who hurt you?
Yeah, who hurt you? Yeah. Anyway, that's been my only real issue with that thing. But yeah.
So you bring it up,
Mm-hmm.
anger issues. I have my own weird thing with emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Talking. Learned this from Rhonda Ramirez up at high school. For whatever reason, I believed that you could just turn off one emotion and it doesn't affect your life. You just don't like. I didn't want to say I was proud of it, but like, I made it apparent. And like when things came up, I was like, I don't get angry. Like I don't yell. I don't get angry. Nothing like that. Come to find out that it's also why I don't feel any joy in my life, and there's that whole tidbit. We're working on the emotion things, but what is it? Just any altercation that you just immediately get angry about?
No. I have an incredibly long fuse. I have a really, really long fuse and a really large keg of dynamite at the end of that fuse. So I've literally only been in like one or two fights, really one fight in my entire life.
Okay.
And I was 11. But like, I lost it.
Yeah.
Like, this kid, I don't even remember all the details that led up to it, but suffice to say, he somehow ended up with my Boy Scout knife and wouldn't give it back. And he was a neighbor kid, a couple years older than me. And I don't know why to this day I snapped, but I snapped. And the next thing I remember was like the neighbors picking me up and dragging me off of him because I had him by the ears and I was bashing his face into the manhole cover in the middle of the street.
Jesus.
And he was bigger than me, older than me. I was always scared of this kid. And maybe that was part of it. I was like just tired of being scared of this. I don't know why. But that scared the shit out of me because I was like, whoa, I have the propensity to do this thing. That's not who I am inside, And no, so for me, the anger, when I say I have anger issues, I can really easily be wound up about issues and not like be physically violent about them, but just get really wound up about things. And nothing good comes of it. And it takes a while. Not saying what you were saying a second ago is necessarily the right or wrong way to do it, but
It's the wrong way.
No, I know clearly, but I think one of the things we have to understand about all emotions, but especially those really strong ones that set in when it's super anger or it's super sadness or it's super one of the darker emotions in it.
Yeah.
It doesn't solve anything.
Yeah.
You being angry isn't going to fix anything. Acknowledging that you got angry and being able to step back and take 10 deep breaths or whatever you want to do to go, yep, I'm really angry and I need to step back. What can I do to focus and actually fix this situation, whatever it is a whole, because what happens with anger, right, or any strong emotion, is it feeds and it feeds.
Feeds itself and then it gets worse,
Anxiety, depression. Anxiety is the same way. I mean, if you have a clinical anxiety or depression issue, it's clinical. But like for those of us who just sometimes get anxious, then dwelling on the anxious thing is not helping, right? It doesn't.
It's a really cool thing that gets worse as you do it more.
Right. And so Yeah. So yeah, so I may anger issues, not so much anger issues as like, maybe it's a passion issue, right? If there's something I'm passionate about, whatever that is, not being a dick, and someone is routinely being a dick, I'm going to be upset by that, and then how do I navigate that
Yeah.
and try to help people learn to not be a dick without bashing them upside the head, because that's not going to be helpful.
Sometimes it is.
Maybe.
I stand by it. I do stand by it. I've got very few rules in life, but I firmly believe everybody needs to be choked up by somebody smaller than them, and everybody needs to be kicked in the face.
Kicked in the face.
Yes.
I've never been kicked in the face. I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, you can get to the end goal, but by like 12 years old, I think those two things should probably have happened to you by then. Because if not, maybe you get lucky and you figure it out, but sometimes you end up like possibly the student that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. I mean, I think you definitely have to have your ass handed to you in some fashion. And the earlier, not like baby, but the earlier it happens to you in your life, probably the better.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to necessarily be physical. It can be the person you look up to more in the world than anybody else. So your coach, your teacher, your band director, your dad, your uncle, your whatever, going,
Yeah.
like, nope. Whatever that is you're
Shuts
doing.
you down.
Dude. Now, this happens to be a physical altercation. I was on the receiving end. But when the guy that I studied African drumming with, Godwin Agbeli, when he was in the States, and he's in Texas, and we been studying with him for a couple of weeks. We were with him every day. We're learning all this stuff. And we were over at Texas Women's University to do a dance and
Oh, nice.
percussion thing, and we were the accompanists, and he's passed, but he was a great dancer as well as a percussionist, so he would get the master, he'd get us going, and then he'd go teach a dance step to these girls, and then he'd come back. And anyway, I was on second drum, and in this particular piece of music, it's a really simple pattern, but if your brain goes away for a second, you might permutate it over somewhere.
Yeah.
And I did. And without missing a beat, he hit me. This is stick-based music, and he hit me on my bicep, and he hit me hard enough that it burst my skin open like I was a friggin' cantaloupe,
Jesus.
And I was bleeding. I'm 21 at Texas Women's University with all these beautiful dancers. I'm bawling like a baby, partly out of surprise.
Yeah.
I did not expect to get hit. Partly out of pain, because I did not expect to feel pain and bleed everywhere. But mostly out of, this guy was about the most important male role model in my life at that time.
Yeah.
And he was so upset with me that he hit me.
He smacked the shit out of you.
In public. And then, so actually, you're going to love this philosophy, because it's basically what your philosophy was. The next day, he wouldn't look at me for the whole rest of that performance, didn't talk to me afterwards. The next day, we get to rehearsal, and he's a little African, like big belly, wore it very proudly. When you live in a poor place, it was his bling, But he came over to me and he grabbed my arm, and barely scabbed over, and he grabs my arm, and he's really rough with me, and he's staring at me in the eyes. He's like, "I've planted a seed of growth in you, and you will never make that mistake again."
Jesus.
And I was like, you're right. I will make lots of mistakes in my life. That will not be one of them.
Never missing that pattern ever again in my life.
He's like, there's a reason there's no petty theft in Ghana. I was like, yeah, I see, because corporal punishment's a real thing. Imagine if when you're 12, you steal a stick of gum or something from the convenience store, and instead of being chastised, they beat you.
Yeah.
You probably won't steal a stick of gum again. You might do something else stupid, but anyway.
Violence isn't the answer.
Not a fan of corporal punishment.
Violence is the answer. Does it work?
Probably not.
Depending on where you're at. How baked into the culture is it?
Yeah. For me, it wasn't the violence, right? For me, it was like him being disappointed.
Of course.
That was why the lesson was learned, But yeah, crazy.
All right. So that brings me to the heavy meditation, the yoga, the journaling. You do all these, lack of a better term, self-help day-to-days. How do they come about? Why are they important to you? What is it that makes you keep doing them?
I'll go backwards. I do them because if I don't do them, I don't feel as well.
Okay.
Right? So,
Yeah,
I think this is true for any of the things that we know are good for us, right? So you realize that you're mostly dehydrated all the damn time because, like most Americans, you don't drink nearly enough water. I'm not saying you. One realizes.
Yes.
One starts a habit of hydrating. They feel great. They fall out of the habit because of life and busyness. They realize that they don't feel as well.
Yeah.
So you go, oh, well, that was an important thing. I guess I'll put that back on my habits list. So for me, if I'm not doing something physical, and I've never thought of myself as an athlete. Like, I was a chubby kid. My mom wasn't. My dad played football. My mom played basketball and volleyball. They were both athletes.
Damn.
I was a chubby kid, and my mom made me do little league basketball because I was tall. So they put me on center, of course.
Of course.
And I hated it. I hated being around the stinky boys. I hated running back and forth on that stupid squeaky floor. There was nothing about basketball that I even liked a little bit. And then all through school, my mom was friends with the high school principal who was also the football. Anyway, he's always like, oh, you got to join the football team. I'm like, no, that's stupid. I didn't grow up watching sports. Anyway, I never considered myself an athlete, but I was always into doing something physical, whether it was lifting something heavy or going for a long walk or riding my bike for hours at a time as a kid. And I fell out of it during college and early parenting, and consequently gained some weight and started having joint issues. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to work for me. So I think the reality of why it seems like I'm Mr. Guru or something at this point is that I finally have time in my life to prioritize myself.
Bars.
And I mean that in a loving way to my kids and all that, but empty nesting is this really powerful time where it's summer, I'm an educator. Today I got up and had coffee with my wife and I journaled and I read a little bit and then got cleaned up and came over to the high school to grab my stuff, took it to the college, went home, made lunch for my wife. We had lunch together. I worked out a little bit more. I read a little bit more. I journaled some, right? At one point I was looking at my watch going, damn, it's 2:30. What am I going to do with the rest of the day? I've already done all the things. I'm not going outside. It's too damn hot. So that's an interesting place to find myself in.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, for me, okay, so this is going to sort of tie all this together, I think. One of the things that Americans suffer from, the West, not just Americans, one of the things that people in the West and everywhere that they've gone and colonized suffer from the most is inflexibility. And I mean this on every possible level. This is the only religion. This is the only political party. This is the only... Okay, so there's that side of it. But I mean physically, we're inflexible people.
Yeah.
We sit all the damn time. There's nothing worse for you, frankly, other than smoking, than sitting. It's bad for you. We know it. We've known it forever. We do it. When I, in the 90s, when got to tour Japan and Hong Kong with the 1 o'clock, and I had never seen a Japanese traditional style toilet before, which isn't a toilet, right? It's a beautiful ceramic hole in the floor, and they've got these beautiful yellow footprints, which is where you stand, and you squat to do your business. If you're 90, you still have to squat to do your business. They don't bring in one of these, in America, we're so fucking inflexible, pardon my French, we're so inflexible that the older you get, the taller the toilets are so that you don't actually have to stretch.
You have to go down as far.
And then they make recliners that lift you up.
Yeah.
No self-respecting Japanese person's going to live that way. They can get into a full squat and hang out there for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's a like a whole thing that they
So
like 7 years ago they acknowledged the Japanese squat, where
Yeah.
it's just like the full blown like knees are all the way up, ass is basically
on
touching the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, like a yoga squat, right?
Yeah.
So physically, we're not flexible. Culturally, we're not flexible, meaning whether it's religiosity or whatever, we're not flexible. But we're not flexible, most of us, in terms of how we deal with situations either, right? Like we've got all this baggage, and a thing happens, whatever. It's a minor inconvenience. You end up with a little old lady driving in front of you, and it turns into this thing, and you're road raging. Like, it's because we're not flexible, and we can't think in a different way and just go, she's an old lady.
Yeah.
She deserves to drive slowly. I happen to be behind her. It's not a big deal. I'm still running 20 minutes ahead of schedule. Right? And similarly, flexibility in terms of being able to think creatively about situations. So, I mean, I think one of the things that I'm most proud of studying the things that I've studied is that, like, improvisation is an important part of who I am. Like, I can open the pantry. My wife hates me for this, but I can open the pantry and she'll be like, we have nothing to eat. And I open the pantry. I'm like, there are 30 meals worth of food in this house. Let me show you. Right.
Yeah.
And I'll make this thing. She's like, how the hell did you do that? I'm like, well, one can improvise if one knows the basic rules.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't put bananas and sardines together necessarily.
Try to avoid that.
But I think being able to improvise and have flexi in your life is everything.
Yeah,
if you're
absolutely.
inflexible in any of these things, you're doomed to suffer.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to win any physical flexibility competitions, but like as a 51-year-old 6'6" guy, I can touch the ground. Like my hammies are loose enough to do that. Most
That's
guys
awesome,
my age
yeah.
can barely touch their knees.
Yeah.
I think we could all stand to work on all of our flexibilities all the time, and we would be much happier for it in the long run. Flexibility.
See?
Get flexi.
They make fun of me because I take vitamins and stretch.
Dude, it's everything, man.
It's so important. See? It's so important. So
And
stretch, Chris.
like, this is a perfectly lovely thing to do, to sip on a beverage in the afternoon.
Absolutely.
It's a perfectly lovely thing to go have a tasty, tasty taco sometimes. But, like, what we consume is important.
Yeah.
And
That's the worst part about me being the past few years getting so high on my level of health and wellness and maintenance that you turn your body over into like this next level of care, and you feel better, but then also when you take a day or two off, you feel so much worse.
Yep.
It is so frustrating.
it is. So it has to be something that you just absolutely love. Do you know this guy, Scooby Workstadt?
Can't say that I do.
You look him later. It doesn't have to be part of the show, but Scooby is this guy who's been a natural lifter and bodybuilder forever. Lives out in California. He's the super brain engineer, like by trade. Has designed and built his own airplane recently, and learned and and he's 64 or 5 now.
Damn.
Dude looks like he might be 38.
Can you look this guy up? I just want to see him.
Look up Scooby's Workshop. Scooby's Workshop. And he, yeah, look at that. Scooby's Workshop. It was. So.
Jesus.
Yeah, and so he created this totally free online workout at home with just the stuff you own. You should never spend money for weights, like buy used crap, like make your own protein bars. Don't waste the money on the crap at the store. Like, he's never competed. This is just what he looks like.
Damn.
And he always has a hat on because he's bald and he doesn't want to get skin cancer on his head. And as it turns out, he's married to the love of his life, who's a man, and so that wasn't ever on the website until a couple of years ago, and people started calling him out and saying bad things, as you can imagine, because humans are cruel. They're dicks. And finally he came out, he's like, yeah, does my body look any less good to you because I'm married to a dude? Like, I mean, he's clearly genetically gifted to me. You don't get pecs like that. I mean, I could lift for the rest of my life and never have pecs.
He just has naturally really good pec shape.
Yeah, he really, really does. And he's literally in his 60s, dude.
He has a W. I don't think I've ever seen like a...
It's impressive, yeah. Anyway, this guy talks a lot about he hasn't missed a day of lifting in like 40 years.
Jesus.
And sometimes that means using, TRX belts in the barn because he's traveling, but he's never missed a day unless he's just been like ill, like, and those are the results you get from that, and totally natural. And like I said, he makes all of his own protein stuff too. Like he buys whey, but like he doesn't believe in any of the marketing stuff. Like he doesn't buy the hype, and he gives all this stuff away on this website, which I think is just awesome too. Like all these training programs and stuff are just, this is what I've learned in my lifetime. It's science-based, take it or leave it, but I'm giving it to you for free. I don't want to make money. I've had a career already.
Damn.
How often does that happen?
Yeah, dude, shout out to him. Damn. I gotta check him out. Learn some things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. One of the things I love is he's really worried as he was getting older about shoulders because it's such a weak joint. So he does a lot of his chest work is dumbbell stuff laying on the floor so that you can't go past.
Yeah.
Because that's where a lot of people get in trouble. I mean, it feels good to stretch past, but you don't really need to still engage the pec. And so having the floor to land on.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, there's a lot to be said about that.
And he's really getting into sort of multi-workout stuff too in the last couple of years, where he's doing a lot of like, one-legged standing on a Bosu ball and doing one-arm shoulder presses with the opposite arm.
Yeah.
So that it's all core, balance, ankle muscles. You're working on your whole body. At this point, he doesn't need to do those micro. He doesn't have to focus on his delts anymore.
No,
you know what I mean? So he just needs to keep his body in good shape at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, he's Arnold's age. He looks better than Arnold. But then he also didn't shoot up
with
tons and tons of
barrels of
cow
Anabar.
testosterone.
Hey, man.
Great.
Do you want to be healthy and live long and all that? Or do you want to be the godfather of bodybuilding?
Absolutely.
Which one do you want?
Figure it out.
Something just in my mind. You just said flexibility, yoga, journaling. What? This is separately, but I did want to ask you, like, how I started getting into journaling in the fall, and trying to figure out what worked best for me, because I acknowledge that, like, one of the things that I was really good at growing up was writing, and I thought like maybe that was just like a innate skill of just like being able to write an essay. But then I realized that like it was what made my papers good was the fact that I had the fluidity of like the creative writing side of things. So I was like, maybe journaling, because in the fall I was rough headspace, trying to figure things out. So I was throwing everything at the wall and seeing what worked out. And what I started realizing is that I wasn't, and talking to somebody else, maybe it was because I was doing it at the end of the day, but I was only talking about the bad stuff.
Oh, dig.
Yeah.
Dig, yeah.
Even though, and like I tried setting up a format because I knew that's how my brain worked. I was like, all right, let me set up a format. What's 3 things I'm grateful for?
Sure.
What's something that I did well today? What's something I need to improve on? And then like thoughts for the day.
Sure.
And the first like the gratitude things started out real strong, and then they started getting real bullshit about midway through the semester, and it's still something I want to like try again. Don't know
Dude, I think the thing with journaling is it's so personal, and you have to figure out what it is you're doing. And some people, like I'm now up to 3 different types of journal things I do every day.
Really?
Like I do. Was talking earlier about kind of getting into Stoicism, and there's this really great book called The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. He's down in Austin, and
Heard
it's
of that,
like
yeah.
every day it's a Stoic quote from Marcus Aurelius or Seneca or Epictetus or somebody, and then like his take on it. It's just a book, right? It's 365 days of cool stuff. But then they came out with a journal version of it, so that like you read the thing, and then the journal version gives you a prompt based on that thing, and there's a spot to write about it in the morning and write about it at night. So that only takes.
What is that called?
So The Daily Stoic.
Look that up for me.
Yeah, Ryan Holiday. He's a monster, man. I love him. The Daily Stoic. Yeah. So I do that, and then I recently read Atomic Habits, James Clear's book, which is all about figuring out your bad habits and your good habits and how you want to change your life. So I'm starting a journal of that, which is sort of kind of checking in every day on like if there's a particular habit you're trying to add to your life. It's really kind of check in and did I do it today? Don't be mad at yourself. Did I do it? Did I not do it? That sort of thing. And then my other journal is just my free journal. I just write.
Just thoughts.
I did the Mind Journal, was the first thing I did a year ago. And the Mind Journal is a journal written for dudes by dudes in the UK. And it's got daily prompts, and it does start with what was the badass thing that happened? I mean, you have these sort of check-in things. How are you feeling today? All that sort of stuff. And it really did get me in the habit of journaling because it gave me something to write about every day. Now my journaling, though, I'm sort of starting to round a corner. I was reading about famous people who have journaled, and one of the things that came up was like Ben Franklin was a journaler. A bunch of people were journalers. But I can't remember who it was. It might have been Ben Franklin. But one of these guys, when he started journaling, was like, all right, I'm going to write down every memory I have from as far back as I can. And when I get caught up to now, then I'll just start doing my daily journaling. So he spent like the first 3 years basically writing his memoirs. Like every day he would sit down and write a childhood memory, a childhood story, and that would lead to new memories, right? Because we have so many memories that it just takes like a cousin who was there to go, bro, remember when? And you're like, oh, I had forgotten all about that, right? Yeah. So, but you can do it for yourself because you remember a memory, you write it down in kind of detail, and then, holy shit, and then this happened, right? The couch was red and black. Who owned red and black couches? My parents did. It looked like a dungeon. My parents had daggers hanging on the wall. So anyway, I've started trying to like write down all these stories, my memories, but then I'm on a separate section of this notebook. I'm writing down the stories I remember my dad and my grandparents telling about their childhoods. Now, this is 3 layers later, and it's me writing about it in my 50s, but I don't know if it'll go anywhere. Maybe my kids will read it one day, and they'll be like, oh, I remember that when Dad used to say that story, tell that story, whatever. If for no other reason, though, it's kind of an interesting process to go through just writing your memories down. And it just taps into a different part of your head, you know. So, and then the next journal bit that I want to add, because I have all this free time apparently, is I used to blog back when blogging wasn't a thing and nobody did it. And we would take these road trips with the kids. We'd spend 4 or 5 weeks at a time living out of our vehicle, driving across the country when they were little.
Damn.
And I would blog everywhere, and they were angry blogs. They were like, how is it that I'm visiting one of the most beautiful places in the country and Americans are so shitty that there's trash everywhere? Why are there a bunch of obese people eating ice cream cones at Mount Rushmore?
Yeah.
Why does this look like Disney? This is supposed to be something solemn, you know? Anyway, my blogs were verbose and interesting, but they were mostly pretty angry.
Yeah.
But I would like to get back into doing some sort of daily writing that I make public. I don't care if I have 2 readers or 0 readers, but I think journaling is for you. Writing your thoughts that you don't mind somebody else looking at and putting them somewhere is something else entirely. Sort of like your podcast, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
You're just kind of putting it out there. So I think writing and just putting it out there, not as a way to make money, just as an exercise, again, in flexibility,
yeah,
right?
just flesh things out, yeah.
And being creative and thinking about stuff. So
being able to, and that's why I like the podcast so much, is it forces you to be able to articulate things that you might not have a full grasp on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of on purpose, but also by accident, because we're so busy, you know, with our individual lives, that, you know, there's not a whole lot of production that can go into and prep that can go into each episode. But it's like I've had to be able to articulate things that I maybe had thought about 10 minutes as I was driving from the middle school back to the high school.
Right. You know, again, sort of tying things together, as an only child and a kid who played alone a lot as a kid, I'm really happiest when I'm like on a bike ride by myself.
Mm.
I enjoy conversation. I enjoy other humans. But my happy place is alone. My wife, it took her years to figure this out. But it's important, right? Community, humans are social beings, right?
Yeah.
So bring up another author that I've really fallen in love. I don't know if you've read any of Mark Manson's books, but he's the guy that wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
I read that one.
It's awesome. And the one that came out after that, if you haven't read it yet, is Everything is Fucked. And it's the subtitle is a book of hope, a book about hope. Mm-hmm. And it's actually not about hope. It's about we all have to give up, but not in the way you think. It's not a dark book at all. But he's a stoic. He's buddies with Ryan Holiday. It's the same circle of dudes.
Yeah.
And he talks about. I always read the acknowledgments when I read a book, because I think it's interesting to see like who people are giving shout outs to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But one of the things he talks about in his acknowledgments of the Everything is Fucked book is that he's like, who would have known that starting this silly book club during a global pandemic and getting together with this group of guys virtually would completely change the course of my life. So finding that group of dudes that you can get together with, and it doesn't have to be a book club, although that's awesome. Like pick a great, heavy, whatever, something you're all interested in, or at least you're mostly all interested in, and read it, distill it, and then get together and shoot the shit about it over it, over some bourbon or whatever. But it doesn't even necessarily have to, I guess my point is, it doesn't necessarily have to be the podcast format, but this has been a way that you've kind of created community for yourself.
Absolutely.
And it's certainly something that I've been thinking about. Like I chat with you, or I chat with people at my job, and I have a small handful of friends that I like. Very small hand. But I would like to have that sort of community of people who are willing to read heavy stuff and get into heavy conversations, and not all be on the same side of the conversation, right? I mean, we've done a really good job of stratifying our country to the point where everyone's just moving. I mean, literally moving, because they don't feel safe where they live for whatever reason. And that's not good. That's bad. Being able to live in a civil society where you can live next to somebody who doesn't believe the same things as you and still get along with them is really important. Yeah. Being flexy.
Wild concepts, man.
Got to be flexy.
All right, man. I want to get you out of here, but
It's because it's hot. We're in the attic.
It is quite warm.
In Texas.
Yeah. But a couple goofy questions for you.
Goofy.
Well, the one that we usually always end on. Are you watching anything that is worthwhile?
Worthwhile or worthwhile?
Well, just watching.
Yeah.
It is wild, isn't it? I always do. Yeah, that's one of those stupid words.
So I tend. Oh man, we just need another. How many hours we got left? I grew up as a PBS kid, right?
Gotcha.
So like after the divorce, I was with mom during the week, dad on the weekends, and during the week, latchkey. Mom had a job. I'd come home, turn on PBS. The reason I know how to build my own house and garden and do all the things is I come home and watch Norm Abrams build a piece of furniture, and then I'd watch Julia Child bake a cake, and then I'd be like, that was my TV. And so I'm really into documentaries. We've already talked about film. If you're an Apple Plus person, if you're an Apple person, some of the best, hippest, newest, interesting documentaries, series, musically related, and historically related. They dropped a handful this last year that are awesome. 1971, the year that music changed everything.
Damn. Okay.
Oh, you think you know some things about 1971 and the year and the music that was from that year. You don't know. It's ridiculous.
71.
71. It's everything. Elton John becomes somebody. James Taylor becomes somebody. I don't know. Sly and the Family Stone becomes somebody. I don't know. Black Sabbath becomes somebody that same year. I don't know. Little Michael Jackson's, there's all this stuff happening in 1 year.
Yeah.
But like all this historical stuff is happening too, right? The Black Panthers and the Attica prison riots.
Oh, wow.
And Aretha Franklin singing at the friggin' church service for those who died at the Attica prison riots, and they have this all on film. I mean, it's ridiculous. So 1971, the year that music changed everything. And what's his name? Producer boy. Mark Ronson, there's a documentary series, not even a documentary series. Mark Ronson has a series on this Apple TV Plus where he looks at one piece of technology per episode that changed everything in the music industry, and then interviews all of the people who are you need to talk about that. So the day that he does the drum machine episode and he has Questlove as his main artist to talk to, or the day that it's Reverb and how Reverb changed everything, or the day he has T-Pain, the day that he has T-Pain on to talk about Auto-Tune and how it changed everything. And it's awesome. Plus it's Ronson, and he's a genius. Whether you like his music or not, he's a verifiable musical genius. So Mark Ronson series. And then there's a series on non-musical on Lincoln. It's just called Lincoln. And it's 8 or 9 episodes, but it looks at this period of like the 5 years that Lincoln's an anybody, right? Because he's like kind of a nobody schmuck, and then all of a sudden he's president, and then it's Civil War, and then he gets shot in the head. It's a really short period of time. But what's awesome about this this particular documentary series is like 99% of the experts, these college professors and researchers and historians that they're actually using to tell the story are people of color. So looking at it through the lens of, he was a good guy compared to the bad guys, but he wasn't exactly a savior either. Now, did he end up befriending Frederick Douglass? Sure. But he wasn't having him over for dinner either. Right? You know what I mean?
Was it kind of out of necessity?
So anyway, it's beautifully shot. It's super, super cool. So those 3 things. That's kind of on the heavy side or musical side.
Did you catch the one about Cosby?
I have not seen the Cosby one
Okay.
yet. Summer of Soul, as movies goes, if you haven't seen Summer of Soul yet, that's Questlove's jam.
Shout out, yeah.
Ridiculous. And then, so Stranger Things, because I'm a kid of the 80s.
Speaks to you a little bit?
It totally speaks to me. We just got caught up.
Do you finish it?
Yeah, I finished all the way through. It's a great show.
I love it. And the music's great, and it's, anyway, so it speaks to me. But then, what's that, it's also on Netflix, the new, it's the Brit, this new Brit, it's based on a graphic novel, the 2 gay kids, high school kids in Britain, it's, it's all the rage right now. We just watched this.
I'm not.
Finished the first season last night. Give me 2 seconds. You have to know about this. It's
not Bridgerton or
No. Thank God, no. Hang on. I want to do this. I got to do this right.
How much was this journal?
It's called Heartstopper.
16 on Amazon.
Yeah. It's called Heartstopper. Bless you. Twice, 3 times. 3 times a lady.
Yeah.
It's called Heartstopper, and it's just beautifully shot. It was originally this graphic novel with, or graphic comic-y kind of thing with all this particular animation, and they're now shooting it live. Not live, but it's being produced with real actors and actresses, but they still have this overlay of all kind of the original art from the girl's original book. And
cool, man.
But it's a story of this like perfect jock rugby kid and this super nerd, the only openly gay kid in school, and how they become best friends, and then they become more than best friends.
Yeah.
It might be the sweetest, most touching thing I've watched in a really long time. It's just really heartfelt, and it's not like, it's like they hold hands. It's not sex, right? It's like, just like, if you're human and you made it through high school and, you know, junior high and high school, you had that no matter your sexuality, you had that first time where you touched a girl's hand or a boy's hand and you felt electricity.
Yeah.
And it's happening, but it's this young gay couple. And I just think it's beautiful because we live in 2022 and I'm tired of people not getting to be who they're supposed to be.
Absolutely, man.
Pisses me off.
Did you, on Netflix as well, did you ever watch Sex Education?
Have not. It's on my list. Yeah.
Okay.
My wife's a TV watcher, and she'll watch a lot of really mindless, and I mean this in a loving way, but she likes mindless TV comedies and dramas to take her mind off of life.
Of course.
I tend to go the other direction. If I'm going to
Gotcha.
watch something, I want it to engage me and make me feel something deep. So I end up saying, oh, you're going to watch that thing. I'm going to go read a heavy book in the other room. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
And I know the sex education, what's it called again?
Sex education.
Yeah, sex education. Certainly has the heavy topics. But yeah, the list is, there's so many great, and we live in a strange time, man. There's so much great new stuff dropping like every day.
It's a lot of really good content. And it's hard
McCartney
to keep up with.
321.
Yeah.
The thing with Rick Rubin and Paul McCartney just hanging out, and like Rick's just like playing tracks from back in the day and soloing the bass part and going, how the hell did you think that up? And then McCartney's just like a 12-year-old and he gets all excited and tells these stories that no one's ever heard before.
Oh, yeah.
So like that's super beautiful. Yeah. It's awesome, man. We live in crazy cool times.
Okay.
Scary times.
Scary times.
There are times.
All right. You've been in America long enough. You've seen these before. So I want you to picture, it's kind of like a food court.
Okay.
Okay.
Food court.
But instead of a food court, food court's a bad example. Sorry. The Taco Bell, KFC, Pizza Hut combo all in one. Have you seen those? Familiar?
Yes. Oh, all the restaurants are kind of in one place.
The signs are stacked on top of each other, and you can order a 2-piece with a pan pizza.
I dig.
Yeah. Okay. Now, every fast food ever.
Okay. Fast food.
Fast food.
Okay.
We allow fast casual as well.
Okay. Casual.
Casual. Right. You're not going to feel like garbage afterwards. Okay.
Okay.
What's like a perfect garbage meal that you're gonna take down?
Wow.
And I'm talking, you can get as specific as you want. Like you want the bun from here.
Okay. This is going to be hard for me because I honestly haven't eaten fast food in 25 years.
I know it's not as much fun because you do take care of your body. But
if I were, so
again, and that's why I put the stipulation. You're gonna feel great afterwards. It's gonna be like if you had a green smoothie, green shake, whatever.
Yeah. Man, that's a tough one. There was a time when Burger King was kind of my thing.
Okay.
Because I liked the flame grilled compared to the McDonald's griddled thing.
Yeah.
And I liked a Whopper back in the day. But then Texas has Whataburger.
Texas does have Whataburger.
Whataburger's good. I will tell you this. Okay, so I can actually make this very easy. I don't even have to go to those places. I can go to the convenience store. Because, like, King snack for me, and I'll eat the whole damn bag, so it is a whole meal.
Yeah.
Cape Cod chips.
Oof.
Straight up kettle, and almost any brand of kettle chips, like well-cooked kettle chips. But Cape Cod kettle-cooked potato chips, and some like straight up New England clam dip.
Oof.
And I will eat the entire family-size pounder bag of potatoes, and eat that clam dip, and I'll wash it down with a tasty beer. Probably, since we're in Texas, probably be some sort of Shiner, because that seems to go. I mean, if Sam Adams is available, it'll probably be with a Sam Adams.
Got to keep the roots true.
But I like fried potato objects. So good McDonald's French fries.
Current French fries or
I haven't had McDonald's
80s
French fries
French fries?
since the 80s or
Well,
90s. Back in the day, they were crack. I mean, they were
because they were fried in beef tallow.
Yeah, well, among other things, yeah.
Amongst other things.
You guys have heard those rumors about the fact that they used to, like, as part of the seasoning solution, that not only did it have that really, really fine salt that they use, and there was sugar in it as well, I mean, for the tiny bit extra sweetness, but that they were actually lacing it with nicotine, and the idea being that it would actually become addictive. Now, it's been found to not be true. Well, we think it's not true, but for a long time there were these rumors like the only reason I eat 12 pounds of McDonald's French fries a week is because they have nicotine in them.
I remember the most disrespectful thing I ever saw was when they were just like, you want something more than large? Here's a basket.
Yeah.
Here's just a basket. $3. We'll give you a basket of French fries.
Unbelievable.
It's the most disrespectful thing, and it's beautiful.
But, so, I mean, I could probably be talked into having a fried avocado taco from Torchy's with my chips and clam
Okay.
dip.
I'll allow it. That's fast casual.
Yeah. I like Torchy's. There'd be a total separate show if we would fight over the taco shops.
Oh, we could...
We're not going to do it today.
Yeah, we can.
But,
we ain't got time today.
Yeah.
But I could definitely fight about...
Yeah, and it kind of
tacos.
depends, right? It kind of depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, man. Last thing. Do you have any thoughts, words of wisdoms, kernels of knowledge, any bit of information to impart on all the crazy amount of fans that we have that watch this
Crazy
show?
amount of fans. I think we hit them already today, but I think a couple of bits of Stoic wisdom. Remember that you'll die, and I think that's really important. I don't mean that as a joke. I think this other really important bit of wisdom that the Stoics like to talk about is this idea of amor fati, which is love your fate. And that doesn't mean to sort of resign yourself. What it means is when you've done all that you can do and you've still been handed a shit sandwich, there's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
You have no control over it. So to love and embrace it rather than rally against it will make you a much happier person in the long run. So those two things. Take care of yourself. Be flexy in every aspect of life. Figure out a way every day to get more flexible in every aspect of your life. Try a new food you've never tried before. Take a different way to work. Drive a different way in. Do a different physical activity than you've ever done before. Get outside of your, as we've talked about already, only child. Get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Go talk to people. Do things, because if that first thing I said is true, and it is, you will die. You may as well enjoy the time you have here and grow. It's literally all we're here to do.
Absolutely.
And you've only got today. You can't fix yesterday, and you have no guarantees of tomorrow. So enjoy the one you got. Love the one you're with.
Beautiful. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you jumping on the show with me.
Pleasure.
Everybody that's rocked with us all the way to the end. I hope you guys enjoyed. Y'all be easy. Peace.